Welcome, friends, to Talking Everything Bible. Is the Bible a book? Does it have a beginning, a middle, and an end? Is there a perfect place to start reading? Let's talk about it. I invite you to leave comments and questions below. My name is Kurt, and I've been a student of the Bible for over 45 years and an ordained minister for 20 years. Am I an expert in the Bible? That's for you to decide. Do I have an open mind about it? Yes, I think I do. I will be sharing insights into the structure, makeup, authors, and history of the Bible. Not so much about its content. I invite you to read the content for yourself. Now let's get into it. Today I'm going to talk about the Bible as a whole book. The Bible, of course, is a collection of 66 books under one cover. The word Bible is derived through Latin from the Greek word biblica, which simply means books. However, the Greek term biblica was not used in ancient Greece to denote the Bible. Rather, they used what's now translated as scripture for the Old Testament, and the New Testament was comprised of letters sent between people and churches that were later categorized into Gospels, meaning just story, the epistles, meaning letters. These were later, around 1400 AD, then combined into one work, which is now known as the Bible. Now, if you're new to the Bible, you may naturally approach it like any other book, having a beginning, a middle, and an ending. Many people attempt to read it in that way just get frustrated because it seems to jump everywhere in place, time, structure, and so forth. This is especially true when it comes to the English translation because the style of communication that the ancient writers used doesn't always translate well into our modern forms and style of communications. The Bible is unique, and we need to have a unique perspective when attempting to read it. The point being is that we need to realize a few things before we dive into reading the Bible that will help us navigate its contents. The first thing is to look at the Bible timeline and to train our brain to think about the Bible timeline different than any other book you've ever read. We're used to thinking linear, in a linear timeline, left to right, beginning to end. We think of Genesis as the beginning and Revelation as the end. Now, in some ways, this is correct, but it's also confusing because the book is about someone who has no beginning and no end. Look, the Bible is a book about God, and God does not have a beginning and an end. However, the Bible is also about God's relationship with us humans and our experiences with God. Now, the thing is, humans do have a beginning and an end. So how do these two things work out? This is what I mean by by retraining our mind to look at the Bible's timeline more from God's point of view than from a human's point of view. Now, the challenge is that we have a very limited capacity to look at things from God's full viewpoint. But I think I can show you something that at least is a start. You will have to keep an open mind here and understand this is only a minute understanding how God views things. So let's start by redrawing the Bible timeline to look more like this. The thing about this timeline you will notice right away is that it has no immediate beginning or end. However, you can just pick a point along the circle. We'll start at the top and call that Genesis and then come around and put Revelations here with all the other books in between. The first thing you'll notice is now Genesis and Revelation are right next to each other, and that is already significant and gives us a different perspective. We'll talk a lot more about that in future episodes. The next significance is that without a beginning and an end, you can start reading anywhere without thinking you've missed something. You're now, if you start reading in the middle, you're no closer to the beginning than you are to the end, and vice versa. But there is something more to this timeline that meets the eye. Notice that we have a space within the timeline, a void, you might say. Now, this is where it gets interesting. What touches every second in this timeline at the same time? You got it. The one that is not confined to time, God Himself. We're going to represent this by putting these symbols for God in the center to represent God. I'll again talk more about these symbols later. God is part of this timeline and yet is not confined to any part of it. He is the center of it. In other words, God is part of the beginning, the end, and everything in between. God is not just in the circle, but outside of the circle also, to infinity and beyond. But for our discussion of the Bible, we're going to concentrate on God's presence in the circle, because that represents His relationship with us, with mankind. So when we read the Bible, if we understand that we're not reading from the beginning to the end, but rather everything we read simply points to the center, to God, we can then let go of the expectations of what we're reading fitting into a certain time or sequence, if we simply keep in mind that it all points to God. Within that framework, there's some significant historical points in time when certain things happen. But if you keep in mind the significance of everything we read is how the events point to the timeless God, the times in history and how it fits into the timeline become more relevant, and we get a complete new perspective and understanding of the stories and the events. If you're saying to yourself, boy, that takes a lot of faith to view and read the Bible with this perspective, then watch my next video coming up, which is called, What's Faith Got to Do with It? If you found this interesting, you don't want to miss the next blog. Why not subscribe to this channel, as I will be talking everything Bible on a regular basis. All right, until next time, have a blessed rest of your day.